The glass is always half full. In crazy times like this, I think it's really important to remember that. And to remember that the reason that saying is a saying is because we're supposed to use it at the times when it seems least likely to be true. In other words, when things are great and it's easy to go, oh, there's pros and cons, there's pluses and minuses, the glass is clearly half full. That's not when we need to be reminded that the glass is half full. It's when in our gut we feel that the glass is empty. We feel that maybe ourselves are empty. That we must remind ourselves the glass is half full. That's why that saying exists. That saying is our clunky colloquial way as humans of saying it's gonna be okay. And it is. It always has been. As horrible as things may get sometimes, they always become okay again. And obviously in this coronavirus COVID-19 time, it's so important to remember that and to remember it at two levels. I think that first of all, we remember it intellectually. We say it's things are going to be okay. They're going to work out mechanically. I can structure my life and create systems and processes to deal with this. But also energetically, we cannot let ourselves get broken and get drained by this situation. And I think that starts with gratitude, and I think that starts with empathy for what people are really going through. For most of us, myself included, this is still mostly an abstract thing that we're dealing with, even though, and maybe more for me than for some, because I've worked from home, pretty much my whole life. Especially the last 12 years, I've been working from home. So haven't had to change that much. My kids were frankly going to be on spring break this week anyways. It's like, we're not really having to deal with, I don't know anybody personally who's sick or dying, but if you look at the numbers, there are hundreds of thousands of people now who do know people that are sick and maybe even dead. And there are hundreds of thousands of more people who have already been either laid off or furloughed or sent home without maybe knowing what their pay is going to look like. There are hundreds of thousands of frontline medical workers and logistics and delivery workers who are more essential than ever, but also forced by that essentialness to be put in harm's way. This is still a time when most of us, it really hasn't hit us, but to realize that there are some that it has. There are some people who've already been as affected by this as they were maybe as other people were maybe historically through great times, like great floods or great tragedies. Like to some people, this is already a world-class, historically weighty tragedy. And to just realize that, however, relatively cushy it may feel for us, that's something I've really been having to check myself on lately, is say that this is mostly abstract for you, Jeff, but it is hurting people. And you have to be sensitive to that. And I'll own that I was wrong. Like when this all started, I sort of was like, oh, people are going nuts. They're buying all the toilet paper. And I was a little bit dismissive about what's actually going on. But I was reading the data the other day, I guess yesterday actually, and looking how in Italy about 1 out of every 10 to 11 people that's been diagnosed is now a mortality statistic. It's almost a 10% death rate. And I suspect there's some reasons for that have to do with reporting and the health system and whatnot. I'm not an expert, but the reality is whether it's 1 in 10 or 1 in 100, this is hurting people. And I was wrong to think that people were making too big a deal about it. Now, I think people were a little bit clumsy in their response to it, but when there is cause to be legitimately concerned, it's inevitable that as a population, we're going to have some awkward responses to that, because in the absence of guidance, we just kind of react, right? But that's not a reason. The fact that all the toilet paper sold out at the grocery stores is not a reason to trivialize the whole matter. And I was frankly a little bit guilty of that. And it's actually why I haven't spoken out about it again until now. The last thing I said about this was I'm trying to go about my way and be as unaffected as possible. And since then, I haven't really had much to say, because I've had this sort of dawning awareness that this is a really big deal. And, I'm seeing all these people out there on the internet that are, I think, and I'm not saying their hearts are not necessarily in it or that their intentions aren't genuine, but there's a little bit of an opportunism happening right now. People saying, this is, buy my course. You got to learn this stuff. Here's how to not get coronavirus. Here's how to, leverage the work from home thing. And, on the one hand, it's hard not to want to get in on that because I teach home-based entrepreneurialism. I teach how to build businesses on the internet. I teach how to leverage the digital economy. And so, but I've been stopped at least up until now. But the reason why I'm sort of breaking that silence, and I'm willing to, I guess, risk being called opportunistic is feedback I've gotten from our actual advisors that work directly with our students. And it sounds like there's real confusion. There's real ambivalence and anxiety and, what inevitably happens when there is this big sort of monstrous abstract thing for us to be afraid of, which is that people start to shrink. And given what my mission is and what I think I'm on this earth to evangelize and stand for, that's when I kind of knew, all right, I gotta jump out there. I gotta have something to say about this, because as cliche as it is, say the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, which, by the way, is never 100% true. There's actually legitimate things to be afraid of. But as cliche as that sounds, it is true, I believe, that right now the greatest threat to individual surviving and thriving through this crisis is fear. There are certain people who are facing medical threats, and I don't want to be insensitive or diminish what they're dealing with. There are people that are dealing with humanitarian threats or challenges that are trying to fight this fight for us. And I'm so grateful to those people. But beyond that, at a larger level, the majority of us right now are being affected by this in a fairly abstract way, but yet we're converting it, a lot of us, into very non-abstract, very concrete and specific responses that, if we're not careful, can inhibit us and can end up making us an unnecessary casualty of this situation. And that's really what this video is about, is how to not be a casualty of this situation beyond what is, what is necessary because maybe it affects your health or it affects your transportation or something. Like how to minimize the liability here. So there's always been a principle in economics that a lot of people are familiar with. I don't know how many, but it's called creative destruction. It's like ultimately the more you learn about creative destruction, I love learning about creative destruction because it reduces fear, because you realize that turnover, disruption, chaos, things breaking, things decaying are in very real ways necessary towards personal growth, economic growth, business growth, opportunity growth, and ultimately for the world to move forward. And approached that way, this is a great example, a great, probably almost generational moment of creative destruction, where so much is going to come out of this that I would argue probably much greater even than like 9/11 and the stuff that happened in the last 20 years, where people are going to say everything changed. There was BC and AC, before COVID-19 and after COVID-19. Like, this is the tipping point, I'm guessing, where something that's been happening for a while sees itself all the way through, which is the displacement of an old economic paradigm with a new economic paradigm, an old professional paradigm with a new professional paradigm. And it's been coming for a long time. And I think that's one of the reasons this situation has felt so abstract to me, is because I've been on board with this since 2008 when I started working online. It's, my business hasn't been disrupted. My lifestyle hasn't particularly been disrupted, although my gym is closed, which is frustrating. And no one I know personally has been affected yet. So it's very easy for me to stay sort of emotionally neutral right now. But that's because my livelihood hasn't been threatened, right? And that's because economically I'm positioned differently than a lot of people. So I think that it is time, as I said, for me to shoot this video to talk about how you owe it to yourself, to your family, and I believe you owe it to the world. Like we have a responsibility in hard times to be a stand and to show that we will not be beaten down by fear. There's other people around you. The reality is most of the world are in a little bit of a sort of a supine position looking for leadership. And every one of us has a calling, a responsibility, an opportunity to be a leader right now and to show what does it look like to move through this undaunted by fear and inspired by opportunity, not in a mercenary, opportunistic way, but in a way that says, hey, the world is changing and I need to lead in that regard, not wait. Because waiting is bad strategy, it's bad leadership, and unfortunately it's contagious. If I'm waiting, other people around me will be waiting, and we'll start this, we'll have this ripple effect of waiting, and everybody gets caught flat-footed, and people get hurt. The opposite of that is moving forward and knowing how to do it. So I want to talk about basically 4 areas that I see where this change has been coming for a really long time, but that right now we have an opportunity to, in fact, I think, again, a responsibility to recognize that this is it. Like the canary done officially left the coal mine. This is the moment. Things have changed. They were changing before, now they are just changed. And we're going to be realizing it over the next 6, 12, 24 months, going, man, that was it. And I either came out a winner or I came out a loser. And that's not maybe fair or politically correct to say, but that's just how it is. So here are the 4 areas that have changed. They were already changing, now they've just changed. Jobs used to be the commuter corporate office model, the traditional office model, as captured so well in shows like The Office and movies like Office Space. I know it's not all that bad. I worked in an office for 3 weeks when I was 16 years old, so I'm not an expert on it, but I do hear stories and I know it's not all that bad. But the reality is that's changed. It's not efficient to pay for all that commercial real estate just so people have a place to do their job. People already have a place to do their job. It's called their homes. And the fact that the world is being forced now to send people home to do their jobs, I think there's going to be an element of no coming back from that. Like people are going to go, hey man, like we're going to have to up level our internet bandwidth, and we're going to have to up level our video conferencing, and some of us are going to have to go buy webcams and microphones, and we're going to have to fight through some technical hurdles and learn how to use certain pieces of software. But the reality is a lot of people are about to make a shift that why would they want to come back from? Why would they go, oh man, I'm saving money on gas. I just freed up a couple hours a day in a commute. I'm more, I have if I structure myself, I can be more efficient and more effective. I lose less time to having to go get food and having to deal with the office kitchen and all this stuff. I can have a water right next to me. I don't have to go to the cooler. Like there's, whatever. There's so many things that just changed. And I don't think people are going to want to come back, a lot of them. And as somebody who's been evangelizing working from home for over a decade now, I know that the single biggest obstacle for most people has been psychological. They're like, well, I really like going into an office, and I like the accountability and the social and the whatever, the energy. The reality is you were never actually forced to make it work the other way. And what I have found is that once people actually get a taste of making it work the other way, they give it the time and the energy, they don't want to come back. My whole business is run by people who I would say almost entirely run by people who used to work in an office, went to work from home, got a taste of it, made it work, realized they could be just as more effective, more efficient, make just as much money, if not more. And if my business ever tried to open an office and get people to commute in every day, there'd be a mutiny. It's actually just better. And I don't think we're going to come back from that. Secondly, education. The educational paradigm has been getting disrupted now for decades. the ballooning costs of university education and the student debt system and the massive student debt crisis. Student debt is the second largest category of debt at least in the United States, behind mortgage debt. Only there's no underlying asset. Mortgages are all secured by property. What are, student debt are just secured by people and their income production ability, which is, half of that money has to get sucked out to go pay the debt. Like it's not a good investment. It's not a good model, and it's been broken for years and we know it, but there just hasn't been an alternative in most people's minds. Well, I think this is the moment everybody realizes, holy crap, that there was an alternative. I won't say it's been there all along. It's been there for over a decade, which is e-learning, self-education. And I think this is going to be a huge step toward self-education, and particularly online or e-learning, replacing or displacing or at least permanently altering mainstream establishment education. The reality is, unless you have a very specific set of things that you are wanting to do, and again, even this I think is going to change, but like for right now, let's say you want to be a nurse, let's say you want to be a linguistics professor, let's say you want to be an astrophysicist. There's certain things you'd have to do right now. You're like, I got to go get a college degree. Even those I believe are going to change. But outside of those very specific lanes, the idea that you just go to college, rack up this debt, get a degree, go get a job, I think that's been at this point permanently broken by this pandemic. The fact is, the skills you can learn online at much lower cost are a lot more profitable than most of the skills you learn in a university. And they're, more importantly even than how profitable they are, they're more flexible. I've been insulated against something like this happening since 2008. Since 2008, I've basically been able to say, not that I would ever say this, but if there's a pandemic, I'll be okay. Most people prior to now haven't been able to say that, but I believe moving forward, people are going to realize I need to be able to say that. And I can, but it's not going to come from stuff that I go pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn in a university. Unless universities change dramatically, probably way more than they possibly could in the next 10 or 20 years. It's like turning the Titanic. But most people, I think, are realizing that, and at risk of sounding too optimistic in a cynical time, like that's Entre's going to do well from that. My business is going to do well from that, because people should be coming online to learn this stuff, and that means something else, which is it's not just education is changing, let me go online and get some of that education. It's also, education is changing, there's a huge opportunity there. Let me get online and promote some of that education. There is a huge opportunity in the e-learning marketing business to go online and say, hey, there's a massive sea change happening. How do I benefit from that? Just like Amazon and Uber and companies like that benefited from changes in the physical economy, the logistics economy, the sharing economy, we all have an opportunity to go online and benefit from changes in the educational economy. Because most great e-learning programs, mine included, have great affiliate programs. And now with COVID-19, you have hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people going, I got to get in on this. Huge opportunity. And then with that comes business. Okay, what do I do with my education? Once I learn some skills, what do I go build? Because here's the thing, now that people have worked from home, they've experienced what it's like to work from home. It's like once you get over the hurdle of not needing to clock into an office every day in order to be productive, then you start to go, wait, I could make more money and have more control over my income if I actually owned my own business. And typically the reason you didn't start your own business is because it's a pain in the butt. You're like, I go to my job and they give me my pencils and they give me my stapler and they give me my desk and my computer and my chair. I don't have to supply all that. And they manage the people and, they hold the meetings and they pay for the rent and they pay for the insurance and, they pay for all the overhead. But like now, that isn't a logical objection, because you can have a home-based business that runs on the internet and still not have to deal with all that. I haven't had a meeting physically, face-to-face. I'm like, okay, come on guys, we got to get together. in like 3 years since I started Entre. We've never had a physical meeting. We have events and stuff that are fun, but we don't have to like physically gather. You don't have to run a brick and mortar business anymore. Traditionally, the reason people didn't start businesses is because brick and mortar businesses are a whole lot of work. But remove the brick and mortar aspect of it, and basically you're doing the same thing that you were doing at a lot of jobs, which is sitting on a computer, typing and clicking a mouse. Only now you have control over your income. Now you have more valuable skills. Now somebody else isn't telling you what you're worth. I think once people go home and they're forced to learn to be productive at home, they're going to go, wait, I don't need a job. If I just learn these few extra skills, I can do all the same work that I'm doing, only as my own boss, with more freedom, more flexibility, and more upside potential. So business is being just as disrupted, I believe, as education. And so for you, it's like, how does this all come together? Well, the education revolution, the job revolution, the business revolution. I believe the best opportunity in the world right now is to learn these skills of online business and use them to promote the e-learning industry as a whole. I think that's where the biggest opportunity is right now. And then finally, and like everything, you do your work to make your money, and then you take that money in a perfect world and convert it into investments. You use it to build wealth, right? And the model is you work enough and get paid enough and invest enough that eventually you don't have to work anymore. So how does that look in this world? How does that look in the new economy? Well, historically, they say, what's the biggest repository of wealth for most people? It's real estate, right? It's their home. Well, in the new economy, the definition of real estate has expanded. I've been saying this for years. There's now what I call digital real estate that's worth just as much as physical real estate. In fact, I had to update my personal financial statement last year for my bank, and I have to do it again this year, every year. And I remember as I was writing it going, this is crazy, because I list out my assets, I own rental properties and stuff. But 3 of the most valuable assets on my balance sheet right now are domain names. Domain names that I've built, I've created the value. It's like being a real estate developer, only I didn't have to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these domains. In fact, on one of them, I spent $11. The 2 others were premium domains I spent more money on, but then the work that I did grew the value of just the names themselves, never mind the business that underlies them. You can develop real estate now without having to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars to get involved in physical property. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars and get involved in physical property. I own physical property too. Physical real estate's amazing, but you have to realize how much it's expanded. And so the old model, which was work hard, earn a paycheck, turn it around into my mortgage, and build up wealth in my home, is now work online, own a business because there's more upside than working an online job, take the income that I generate from that, use it to build both physical and digital wealth, real estate assets that have a lot more leverage and a lot more potential growth than even physical real estate by itself, and basically accelerate the whole process. It used to be like a 40-year process. Now it can be like, realistically a 5 or 10-year process to build enough wealth to be able to retire. And the thing is, in the old model, what happened if you retired too soon? What happened if you worked from 20 to 40, made a bunch of money, invested in real estate, and said, oh, I'm good, I'm retiring, and then there was a crash and you lost your real estate and you had to go back to work? What happened then? People say, oh, well, you can't come back to work. You've been out of the workforce for 5 years and you're too old. We're not hiring. We're not looking for you. Yeah, that happened. That happened to a lot of people. I know people that happened to. But what about this? What happens if you do your online business, take some money, invest it, build digital and physical real estate assets, and then maybe you're like, oh, you know what? I'm a little tight. I need to go back to work. Nobody's going to stop you. You go right back online and reapply the same skills and redo the same business and fire it right back up. You're not either in or you're out. It's something you can turn on and off anytime you want. The point is to get more nimble, more flexible, and use this opportunity, this bellwether moment in human history, to say, I can turn this into a win, even in the wake of undeniable tragedy. I can turn this into a win for myself. The moment to do that is now, though. There is a serious pace of diminishing returns over time if you wait. That's one of the reasons I had to make this video now. I realized, okay, I'm being too quiet about something that's too important, and I'm taking it for granted because I've had it since 2008. I've been pandemic proof since 2008. But that's no reason to keep my mouth shut about it. Just because I was guilty, because I was too flippant about it, the first couple weeks. So I'm here to tell you, waiting a year costs you money. Waiting 6 months costs you money. Waiting a week probably costs you money. Doesn't mean maybe it's not the right thing to do. If you need to hit the store, stock up, take care of your family, secure your stuff, whatever. I get it. We're all having to go through a lot of stuff right now, but this isn't a moment to go, well, let me pop my head up in 3 months. First of all, you're going to be going nuts in those 3 months because you're going to be feeling powerless, helpless, and fearful because you're not being proactive. And secondly, you're actually costing yourself opportunity because the opportunity is the biggest right now. Tomorrow, it'll be a little smaller. It'll still be huge, but it'll be a little smaller. The next day, a little smaller still. It's the biggest right now. I hope that's useful to you. I don't know who's going to see this video. I don't even know where I'm going to put it. Probably some people inside Entre are going to see this, in which case, great. I'm glad you're here. I hope that you feel this energy and go, man, I am glad I'm here too. Now is the time. I need to seize the moment. And anybody outside who's seeing this, look, I don't care if it's Entre or not. Do something. Understand that at the job level, the education level, the business level, and the wealth creation level, this thing has changed your world. And do something to proactively plug into that and get on the crest of that wave so that it doesn't smash on top of you a year from now and realize, oh my gosh, because I was fearful, I let myself get stuck and now I'm screwed. And to anyone who's out there dealing on the front lines with all this, the fact that I get to sit here and make videos like this under the veneer of protection that you're basically out there fortifying is not lost on myself and millions of others. Thank you for what you do. I think that's all I got. World, I appreciate you. Take care.